This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our Kaalia of the Vast EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Up and Up series. Today we are going to update and upgrade our Kaalia of the Vast EDH deck. We've got a handful of cards going in and a handful of cards coming out, so let's begin right away with the first card going in. That is the Archfiend of Despair. Here we have a 6/6 flying demon for 6 and 2 black mana. Our opponents cannot gain life. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. This is the Wound Reflection ability, a black enchantment that originally debuted in Shadowmoor. This was a card that was very, very expensive for a very, very long time, and once it found its first ever reprint in Commander Masters, a copy became much more economically viable to include. And here we have it. It's going into Kaalia, and there's very little discussion as to the power of this card, particularly if we ramp out Kaalia ahead of curve on our side of the battlefield, and we put the Archfiend tapped and attacking on turn maybe 3. That's going to be a very, very nice card to have in the early portions of the game. With the Archfiend of Despair going in, it is going to replace Kokusho the Evening Star. Here we had a 5/5 flying dragon for 2 dragon spirit for 4 and 2 black mana. And whenever Kokusho died, we would have each opponent lose 5 life, and then we would gain life equal to the life lost this way. The thought process here is that Kokusho's ability is only a 1 per turn ability, as in it's going to die, and then if it's in the graveyard, it's not going to do anything else for us outside of any recursive abilities or perhaps getting exiled by Mimic Vat. With the Archfiend of Despair, that end of turn, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost. That's going to happen turn after turn after turn. Note that we do not have to be the player dealing damage to our opponents to have them lose life and have that be triggered by the Archfiend of Despair. So we're just getting more bang for our Kaalia buck here. The 6/6 is bigger. We both have the evasion. The life loss is a lot more potent. Yes, we do end up losing the potential of peripheral life gain, but we really don't need that because of the other cards that we have in the 99 of this build. Archfiend of Despair is an upgrade over Kokusho, and that's just the bottom line. All right, card number 2 going in. That is going to be the Hoarding Broodlord. Here we have a 7/6 dragon with flying for 5 and 3 black mana. It also has the Convoke ability, which means that we can use our creatures to help cast the spell by tapping them to add 1 colorless mana or 1 mana of that creature's color. However, what we're looking for here is to not use our monstrous winged biggins to help cast the Hoarding Broodlord. So although it does have Convoke, it most likely is apparent that we're not going to be tapping our creatures to help get the Hoarding Broodlord onto our side of the battlefield. When it does come into play, we search our library for a card in exile at face down, and for as long as that card remains exiled, we may play it. So this is very similar to Rune-Scarred Demon's Demonic Tutor-like ability, except it doesn't put the card directly into our hand, it puts the card into exile. And the very last line of text here on the bottom of this dragon reads, spells we cast from exile have Convoke. Now that may be something that we could consider depending on the board state and where the game is at the time. We may want to tap some of our creatures to cast whatever card we searched for with Hoarding Broodlord, and we can use those creatures through this card's Convoke ability to do so. Hoarding Broodlord is going to add options to our gameplay, and that is not a bad thing when we're rolling with Kaalia. With the Hoarding Broodlord going into the 99, it's going to replace Yosei the Morning Star. Now, similar to Kokusho, here we have an ability that triggers when the creature dies. Yosei is a 5/5 with flying for 4 and 2 white, and when Yosei dies, target player skips their next untap step, and we tap up to 5 target permanents that player controls. So for 1 turn, when Yosei dies, we could really hurt and hinder one of our opponents. But again, similar to Kakusho, this is just a one-time ability outside of any recursive effects that we have from the graveyard, or if we were to exile this with Mimic Vat. And actually, now that I think about it, I may have misspoken, because I don't believe Mimic Vat sacrifices the creature that it creates. I believe it exiles it. So I'm going to walk that all the way back to Kakusho and say that even with Mimic Vat, Kakusho's value is even less in the 99 than what the Archfiend of Despair is going to provide. Because now I'm almost certain that Mimic Vat exiles the token at the beginning of the next end step and does not have it sacrificed. So there will be no death triggers here for Kakusho or for Yosei. So the thought process here is, as opposed to tapping down an opponent for a turn, we can have the hoarding broodlord over there give us any card we want that we can exile and cast from exile, and then we still have the 7/6 body on our side of the battlefield. That is a lot more proactive for building our board than reactive, as opposed to what Yosei could do by temporarily hindering an opponent for a turn. All right, card number 3 going into this 99. It is, yes, the Balrog of Moria. Here is a rarity for us to include a creature into the 99 of a Kaalia build that does not fly. This will only be the second creature in the 99 that does not fly. It does have evasion with trample. It does have haste. It's also an 8/8 for 4/2 black mana and a red. We never worry about the mana values of the creatures we put into this deck because, well, we're rolling with Special K over there. So what is so good about the Balrog of Moria? Well, when the Balrog of Moria dies, we may exile it. And when we do, for each opponent, we exile up to one target creature that player controls. We can also cycle this card away from our hand by paying 3 and 1 red mana. If we do, we discard it, we draw a card, and we create 2 treasure tokens. Now remember, we're really looking to get the Balrog of Moria onto the battlefield, because even though it doesn't fly, it does have that trample as part of the vase, let's try that again. It does have trample, which is a type of evasion, and the 8/8 means it could probably withstand a lot of combat, particularly in the early game. If we can get this onto the battlefield with Kaalia on turn 3, 4, 5, our opponents are going to have quite a problem on their hands, particularly when considering that if this creature were to die, we're going to exile one of their creatures from each side of our opponent's battlefield. All right, with the Balrog of Moria going into the 99, it is replacing the Bogardan Hellkite. The Hellkite was a 5/5 with flash for 6 and 2 red mana, but trust me, we were never casting this for 6 and 2 red mana. This was getting put into play with Kaalia and spreading around 5 points of direct damage as a way in which to cleanse the battlefield of any troublesome or problematic creatures that may be lurking on our opponent's sides of the battlefield. This was a very good card to pair up with Mimic Vat because of its ETB trigger. That enter the battlefield trigger happens, it spreads that 5 points of damage divided among any number of targets. So we're going to lose that direct damage, but we're gaining a bigger creature. It's an 8/8 versus a 5/5. It actually has a lesser mana value, but again, we don't really care about the mana value. But what we're gaining with the Balrog of Moria is the exile ability of having of exiling an opponent's creature when the Balrog dies. That should do more than the spreading around of peripheral direct damage that Bogardan Hellkite provided. All right, the last card going in, it is the Cavern Horde Dragon. Here we have a 6/6 dragon for 7 and 2 red. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest number of artifacts an opponent controls. So this could be a card that we cast without worrying about putting it into play with Kaalia or any of our other cheat onto the battlefield effects. It's a flyer, it's a trampler, and it has haste. And whenever the Cavern Horde Dragon deals combat damage to a player, we create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls. So if there's anyone at our side of the table that's playing heavy artifacts, getting the Cavern Horde Dragon onto the battlefield, that could provide so many benefits for us, particularly when we consider the hefty mana values of the biggins in the 99 of this deck. with the Cavern Horde Dragon going in, it is going to replace Balrog. Here we had a demon that was 5/5 with flying for 3 and 2 red mana, and whenever it attacked or died, we choose one mode, and we may choose... and then each mode we may choose one or more of the following modes, and each mode must target a different player. So we could, in effect, have each opponent affected by Balrog. Either target opponent draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random, target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact, or Balrog deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. All of those abilities are very, very... how would we say, game dependent, not really very stable. I mean, I think we can expect to disrupt hands and maybe have a non-token artifact sacrificed, but let's face it, with what Cavern Horde Dragon can do for our side of the battlefield, it's seemingly a lot more impactful than what Balrog could do from a defensive capability. And there you have it, MTGBC. 4 cards going in, 4 cards coming out. Let me know your thoughts about these changes in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.